go through the maze of the intricately woven lives that we're attempting to lead and enjoy, there come points of frustration, points at which we wonder, is this what we signed up for? Is this what we were chasing? And at those occasions, we suddenly seem to wake up and look for a way out. But we are so deeply lost in the maze that it seems that there is no way out. Out of His unlimited compassion, the Supreme Lord Himself comes down and He gives us a way out. And if we have even the slightest fraction of the intelligence that we believe that we have, then it is incumbent upon us to look at these instructions given in the Bhagavad Gita very carefully, particularly the verse that we're going to read today. Before we go into the verse, we start with prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, Knowledge of the Absolute, text 29. Jara Marana Mokshaya Mam Ashritya Yatantiye Te Brahma Tad Vidu Kritsnam Adhyatmam Karma Chakhilam. Jara Marana Mokshaya Mam Ashritya Yatantiye Te Brahma Tad Vidhu Kritsnam Adhyatmam Karma Chakhilam. Jara Marana Mokshaya Mam Ashritya Yatantiye Te Brahma Tad Vidhu Kritsnam Adhyatmam Karma Chakhilam.
Jara Marana Mokshaya Mama Shritya Yatantiye Te Brahma Tad Vidu Kritsnam Adhyatmam Karma Chakhilam.
Jara Marana Mokshaya Mama Shritya Yatantiye Te Brahma Tad Vidhu Krishnam Adhyatmam Karma Chakhilam.
Jara Marana Mokshaya Mama Shritya Yatantiye Te Brahma Tad Vidhu Krishnam Adhyatmam Karma Chakhilam.
Jara Marana Mokshaya Mam Ashritya Yatantiye Te Brahma Tad Vidhu Kritsnam Adhyatmam Karma Chakhilam.
Jara Marana Mokshaya Mam asritya yatanti ye.
Mam ashritya yatanti ye.
Te Brahma tadvidu kritsnam.
Te brahma tatvidu kritsnam.
Adhyatmam karma chakilam.
Adhyatmam karma chakhilam.
Jara marana mokshaya
Jara marana mokshaya.
mama shritya tantiye
Mam ashritya yatantiye.
te brahma tad vidu kritsam
Te brahma tatvidu kitsnam.
adhyatmam karma chakhilam.
Adhyatmam karma chakhilam.
Marana mokshaya
Jara marana mokshaya.
Mamishratya yatantiye.
Mam ashritya yatantiye.
Te Brahma tadvidu Krishtam nam.
Te brahma tatvidu kritsnam.
Adhyatman karma chakhilam.
Adhyatmam karma chakhilam. Jara marana mokshaya. Mam ashritya yatantiye. Te brahma tatvidu kritsnam. Adhyatmam karma chakhilam. Online. Jagannath Tirtha Prabhu. Oh, sorry. Ankit Prabhu. Jara marana mokshaya. Mam ashritya yatantiye. Te brahma tatvidu kritsnam. Adhyatmam karma chakhilam. Synonyms. Jara, old age. Marana, death. Mokshaya, for the purpose of liberation. Mam, unto me. Ashritya, taking shelter of. Yatanti, endeavor. Ye, all those. Te, such persons. Brahma, Brahman. Tat, actually that. Viduhu, they know. Kritsnam, everything. Adhyatmam, transcendental. Karma, fruitive activities. Cha, also. Akhilam, entirely. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental and fruitive activities. Translation with repetition. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental and fruitive activities. Purport. Birth, death, old age, and diseases affect this material body, but not the spiritual body. There is no birth, death, old age, and disease for the spiritual body. So one who attains a spiritual body becomes one of the associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engages in eternal devotional service, is really liberated. Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit. It is said that one should understand that he is Brahman, spirit soul. This Brahman conception of life is also in devotional service as described in this verse. The pure devotees are transcendentally situated on the Brahman platform and they know everything about transcendental and material activities. 4 kinds of impure devotees who engage themselves in transcendental service of the Lord achieve the respective goals, and by the grace of the Supreme Lord, when they are fully Krishna conscious, they actually enjoy spiritual association with the Supreme Lord. But those who are worshippers of demigods never reach the Supreme Lord in his supreme planet. Even the less intelligent Brahman realized persons cannot reach the supreme planet of Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavana. Only persons who perform activities in Krishna consciousness, Mam Ashritya, are actually entitled to be called Brahman, because they are actually endeavoring to reach the Krishna planet. Such persons have no misgivings about Krishna, and thus they are factually Brahman. Those who are engaged in worshipping the form or archa of the Lord, or who are engaged in meditation on the Lord simply for liberation from material bondage, also know, by the grace of the Lord, the purports of Brahman, Adhibhuta, etc., as explained by the Lord in the next chapter. Thus ends a wonderful transcendental purport. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So it's a very interesting verse. We are now advancing in the creamiest parts of Bhagavad Gita. As you have heard before, the Bhagavad Gita has 18 chapters. It has divided broadly into 3 sections. The first 6 chapters describe karma yoga. The last 6 chapters describe jnana yoga, and the middle 6 chapters described the creamiest of Bhagavad Gita, the creamiest of the creamiest portions of Bhagavad Gita, that is Bhakti Yoga. And now we are coming towards the end of the 7th chapter, and we are advancing towards the 8th chapter. These 4 verses, starting from the verse 27, 28, 29, 30, they are setting the stage for the beginning of the 4th chapter. Beginning of the 8th chapter, and you will see that in the coming weeks. So let us understand today's verse a little bit closer. Jara Marana Mokshaya. The word Mokshaya, moksha, is liberation. Liberation from what? That is there in the previous 2 words, Jara and Marana. Jara is old age, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi, that we have heard before. Jara is old age. Marana is death. So, liberation from old age and death. And mokshaya, that modifier in that word, mokshaya, means for the purpose of liberation. So, for the purpose of liberation from old age and disease. What happens? What is it that one should do for that? For the purpose of liberation from old age and disease, Mam Ashritya Yatantiye. So, there is a certain class of people who take shelter of the Supreme Lord, take shelter of Krishna. Mam is referring, Krishna is referring to himself. In Bhagavad Gita, in several places, you will see this word Mam. Man Mana Bhava. No, not in that verse, it's not there. Which verse has Mam? Man Maya Mam Upashritaha. Bahavo, the first line, Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha, Man Maya Mam Upashritaha. So, Upashritaha, that Upashritaha and this Upashritya is the same that we will see. But this word mam, when it comes, Krishna is referring to himself. And Prabhupada cautions the readers of impersonalist interpreters who would often interpret that the word mam, it refers to not Krishna, but to the unborn within Krishna, that he has said about Manmana Bhava. But Manmana Bhava, Mam Namaskuru, yes, exactly, that is why it triggered. So that Mam, Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto Madhyaji, Mam Namaskuru. In that, the Mam, when it is being said, it refers to Krishna himself. It is not that Krishna is an ordinary person like us, that he has a spirit soul, or that there is some other mystical element inside Krishna that is inside all of us. And just like Krishna is saying, you offer obeisances to his unborn within himself, that we should also offer respectful obeisances to ourselves. That is not the meaning of that. So here Mam is referring to Krishna, particularly Krishna. And it's a very, very pertinent word, because all over the world there are innumerable systems of faith in which there are innumerable ways in which there is description of how to get out of the cycle of birth and death, or how to escape the resultant reactions of our sinful activities. This kind of escape from sinful reactions or pardon from sinful reactions, this has been described in several faith systems. And in many of those faith systems, there is no recognition of a personality of Godhead. And therefore, the persons who take up to those systems have no access to this direct way of achieving that goal. What goal? That is there in the previous line, Jara, Marana, Mokshaya. If somebody wants to get out of the cycle of old age and death, then there's a very simple and direct way, which is to take shelter of Krishna, Mam Ashritya Yatantiye. So all the endeavors that they take up are taken up for the purpose of liberation from old age and death by taking direct shelter of Supreme Lord. Such persons are Brahman. Te Brahma Tat Viduhu Kritsnam. Why they are Brahman? Because they know everything about what? About two things that is mentioned here. About what is transcendental activity and what is fruitive activity. Adhyatmam karma cha akhilam. They know completely what exactly is transcendental activity and what exactly is fruitive activity. So the translation is, intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental and fruitive activities. Here Prabhupada has added a clarification in the translation, which is not there in the word-to-word translation. Can somebody say what that is? That is one. There is one more. In a way, you can say intelligent is viduhu, they know. Yes. So in devotional service is a phrase that is not explicitly mentioned, but it is implied in the word ashritya. So Mam Ashritya, when somebody takes shelter of Krishna, that is not possible without devotional service. Because Krishna is a person, and recognition, if you are taking shelter of a person, that means you have to treat that person as a person. There is no meaning of taking shelter of this table or the chair or computer, right? It just means I'm using an object. If I am depending on some object, let's say I don't want to fall down, so I'm using a walking stick. Does it mean I've taken shelter of walking stick? It doesn't mean that, right? I'm just using a crutch for my personal benefit, for my own satisfaction, for my sense gratification, for my safety. I'm using a walking stick. But here, when you're taking shelter of Krishna, then that as a person, first thing is you recognize that Krishna is a person. And among the processes of transcendentalists, there is only one process that recognizes that there is a personality to whom you take shelter, and that is Bhakti Yoga or devotional service. So here the word devotional service is used, and intelligent persons also there who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death. So this is the verse. Let us take a moment to see what is this, the context here and connectivity with the previous verses. There is mention here of two kinds of activities, adhyatmam and karma, a transcendental activity and fruitive activity. So if you see, and then there is also a mention of a purpose. In a way, purpose can also be construed to be desire, because if I have a goal, there is a goal towards which I am working, therefore I desire that, I want that. I want something and therefore I am working for it. And then there is also the notion of activity, because my activities are naturally a consequence of my goal. The goal that we set, it leads us to contemplate upon that goal. It leads us to meditate and make plans on how exactly will I achieve that goal. And based on the plans, we undertake activities. Therefore, these activities that we set are a direct consequence of the goal that we set. And the goal itself is set based on something more fundamental, and that is desire. If you see in the verse 27, Krishna is saying that, giving a fundamental reason why we are here. And unless you understand why we are here, Jara Marana Mokshaya, that goal, there is no way to set that goal. So if directly Krishna starts saying about Jara Marana Mokshaya, do something, even after hearing all these things, we still don't get it. So it is therefore Krishna is being very kind, understanding our conditional state. He is first setting the context of why are we here to begin with. We are here because of Ichcha Dvesha Samuthena Dvandva Mohena Bharata Sarva Bhutani Sammoham Sargeyanti Parantapa. So we are here because of the desire and hate, duality of desire and hate. Ichcha Dvesha Samuthena Dvandva Mohena Bharata, the duality of desire and hate makes us fall into illusion, and because of that illusion, we are forced to accept a body in this material world. And the moment we take the body in this material world, we start executing activities which are based upon the goal we have set, and the goal is based on Ichcha and Dvesha. The goal is based on how to enjoy myself, how to minimize the enjoyment of others. Right? That is what Ichcha and Dvesha means. Ichcha is desire, means I should maximize my enjoyment. And Dvesha is envy, which means I want to minimize, particularly, I don't want Krishna to enjoy because of me. Of course, Krishna's enjoyment is unlimited. But my desire as a living entity is corrupted by the duality of desire and envy, desire and hate. Is it desire and hate? So this desire and hate is coloring all our activities, which means which describes pretty much all the interactions that we have in the material world, which are geared towards maximizing our own enjoyment and designed to cheat others of their share of enjoyment. So that kind of a line of activity results in sinful reactions or resultant reactions. And these resultant reactions bind a person to this material world and cause further suffering, because he has to accept more and more bodies as a result of those desires that he has and state of mind that he has to accept more and more bodies. But if somebody is able to get in touch with a devotee and start the process of devotional service, then gradually those resultant reactions get burnt up. These resultant reactions, by the mercy of a pure devotee, they can get burnt up very fast. Or if somebody is not fortunate to be in contact with a pure devotee and they're making attempts on their own, it may take thousands of lifetimes of endeavor by oneself through the process of Jnana Marga or Jnana Yoga. After many thousands of lifetimes, then if a person is fortunate, he may come to the realization that actually devotional service is the best way to get out of this cycle of birth and death. But if a person is fortunate, then that can happen much sooner by coming in touch with the pure devotee. So we have seen this all in the previous classes. And so what happens when those sinful reactions are burnt up? So we saw that in the last class. Yesham tvantagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvanda moha nirmukta bhajante mam dhridavrata. Which means that by taking up to the process of devotional service, these resultant reactions get gradually burnt up. And as the resultant reactions are fully burnt up, then the person is able to take up to Krishna consciousness with firm conviction and determination. In other words, the enemy of determination, because oftentimes we are wondering, why am I missing out on determination? Why is it that after taking up, sometimes a little bit later, a few years later, I lose enthusiasm? What is happening? One of the enemies of that loss of determination, why we lose determination to pursue devotional service, is the resultant reactions. Those resultant reactions interfere, although in spiritual activities cannot be interfered by material activities or material situation. But for a person who is just trying to advance and has a tender progress, is tender in their progress of devotional service, Komal Bhakti, Komal Shraddha, at that stage, if there are sudden calamities, then it's possible for a person to be shaken from their path. A person who's endeavoring may suddenly get hit with something and they may think, oh, in spite of trying to advance in devotional service, this is happening to me. So must be something wrong with the process I'm following. They may give up. Or they may blame the situation and say, oh, now my situation is not favorable because I've got so many health problems, I've got so much economic problems, or I have a family problem, or these kind of problems, and therefore this is not the right time for me. Let things settle down and then I will start again. So these resultant reactions can come in the way of somebody who does not have strong determination, not very intelligent, but for such a person it can happen. But when these resultant reactions, if somebody is able to persevere somehow in devotional service, then these resultant reactions do burn up, and when they burn up, the determination becomes very strong. And in today's verse, there is continuation of that when a person has such firm determination to get out of this cycle of the birth and death, which causes them to fall into this cycle, sarge yanti parantapa. So for them to fall into this material world, having overcome those the ichcha and dvesha, the dualities of desire and hate, now they have come to the point where they understand that actually devotional service, by taking shelter of the Supreme Lord, is the only way to come out of the cycle of old age and death, jara marana mokshaya. So now, having changed the goal from a goal of desire, goal which is stemming from desire and hate, desire to maximize one's own sense gratification, and hatred towards others because their sense gratification appears to be better than mine. So once a person is able to overcome that, then the new desire takes hold. It is not that a person is desireless. Desire is a intrinsic quality of the spirit soul. One can never stop desiring. But the desire can change. The direction of desire can change. So when the desire changes from sense gratification to a strong and determined desire to come out of the cycle of old age and disease, then persons who are intelligent, because there are many persons who can have such a desire, but then they will follow some false leader who takes them in the path of more sense gratification. It is just covered, veiled sense gratification. For example, some persons are attracted to the process of remaining silent. They will say that for 7 days, I will not speak. No talking. Because somebody has told them that by this process of imposed silence, one can achieve permanent liberation from the cycle of birth and death. And they follow that. But they are not able to achieve it. Why? Because their mind is not silent. Silence actually means silence of the mind from material engrossment. So actual silence is silence from material engrossment, silence of the mind, but that is not achieved by simply observing silence of the words of the mouth. Of course, arresting or controlling the tongue from speaking unnecessary subjects which aggravate our sense gratification and desire for sense gratification, that certainly gives some temporary relief, like a painkiller. If a person is feeling sudden pain or fever, then you take a medicine, you take some Tylenol or something to get rid of the fever temporarily. But that doesn't mean that your body will no longer get diseases in future, nor does it permanently cure. It's just symptomatic relief. So some short-term symptomatic relief is found, and then they immediately call up their friends and say, oh, I went for the 7-day program where we had to switch off our mobile, switch off all the email, and we had to be silent. It was so nice. It was very nice. You should also experience it. And in this way, this propagates, and people are endeavoring in the wrong way. Endeavoring with the goal, but in the wrong way. But the persons who are intelligent, their goal is also right, and their endeavor is also right. Why? Why the endeavor is right? Because they have taken shelter of Krishna. Because they have taken shelter of Krishna and is pure devotee, therefore they are able to progress in the right way and actually get to the point of understanding what is transcendental activity, what is naishkarmya, what is activity that does not lead to resultant reaction, and what is a fruitive activity. So this difference between the fruitive activity and transcendental activity is one of the items of knowledge. And this item of knowledge is a direct result of their having taken shelter of the Supreme Lord and his pure devotee. This process of taking shelter has been described in detail by the acharyas, predecessor acharyas, and Srila Prabhupada has translated all those works in English so that we may take advantage of the correct process of taking shelter, and so that we may not get misled by people who claim to give us the process of surrender, but in fact they're only getting us more implicated. One example I gave is the silence process. There are many other examples. There are some individuals who in the 70s and 80s said that the best way to get liberated from the desire for sense gratification is to 100% indulge in unrestricted sense gratification. There were many individuals who came like that, many swamis and so-called godmen came and put various kinds of titles that misled innocent people. And here Prabhupada has given us access to the authoritative literature that gives us the process of surrender, which starts from anukulyasya sankalpam pratikulyasya varjanam. That is, accepting everything that is in favor of devotional service and rejecting everything that is not in favor of devotional service. There are others, but these two itself are so important in our life that if we were to follow just these two principles, we will make very rapid progress in devotional service in the process of surrender. So some of us, we are thinking that we are moving on the process of surrender, but because of not keeping these principles in mind in our everyday decision making, we miss out on some of the low-hanging fruits, on discounted opportunities that come our way. Some of you may have have anyone played video games before in life? Ever in life? Video games? Video games. Why are you pushing half? Either it is up or down. Okay. Everybody has played. I've also played video games. So, except maybe here. So video games have this lure of getting people hooked on. What is that lure? It is those easy pot of treasure or gold or a diamond that will come simply by walking along a path. Let us say there is one character in a video game and the character is walking along. He doesn't have to do anything. No jumping, dancing, nothing. You're just walking along. Suddenly there will be one diamond there. You just touch it, you'll get the diamond and you can walk. So like that, there are freebie opportunities that Krishna gives us in our everyday life to advance in surrender. Everyday life, every single day, there are opportunities like that. These are exactly like, because, for example, if somebody is playing level 1 of a game, right, level 1 of a game, then what happens? There will not be some very big, complicated, high skill task to be done, right? It will be some very simple task. You just walk without falling down anywhere, just walk straight line, you'll get 3 diamonds here. then walk 3 more steps, another 3 diamonds will come. Oh, I'm so good at this video game. Let me go to level 2. Right? So similarly, for a person who's endeavoring, trying to surrender to Krishna, Krishna gives these low-hanging fruits. And all that we have to do is stay on the path by following these 2 principles. There are 6 principles which one should remember, but I'll just talk about these 2 principles because they're so easy to remember. Anukulyasya sankalpam, pratikulyasya varjanam. So all we have to do is, we have to decide that when there is any decision to be made, and in every day we are making several decisions. Every hour we are making decisions. Every moment actually, the mind is constantly making decisions. So the decision that we make, we should evaluate, is this favorable for devotional service or is it unfavorable for devotional service? Simply by making the determination, and sometimes we don't know whether it's favorable or unfavorable. We think that what is unfavorable is favorable and what is favorable is unfavorable. And we think like that because what is unfavorable is actually what we want, because it is what gives us the sense enjoyment. Actually, what we are doing in our day, whenever we see those opportunities, is we evaluate to see, is this decision, is this path going to give me greater sense gratification, or is the other path going to give me greater sense gratification? This is actually our way of evaluating every decision. And because on those microscopic decision opportunities, we are using sense gratification as the primary yardstick of deciding which way to go, we lose that free diamond that's available to us in our journey, in our level 1, in our first level of the game. So if we can remember that in this path, there is an opportunity for jara marana moksha. There is an opportunity to be permanently rid of old age and death. And there is an opportunity for us to come directly in association with the Lord and enjoy direct activities with the Lord. If we can keep that goal, if that objective, final objective which Prabhupada is describing in the purport which you heard today, and we remember that Mam Ashritya involves making several decisions in the day, with the yardstick being, is this favorable or unfavorable? Now the problem that comes before us is, the agency that we use to decide whether it's favorable or unfavorable is our own mind. Our own mind is making the decision. And our own mind, we know what the problem is. It's already corrupted. It actually wants to fool us into taking a decision which is maximizing sense gratification. This is a problem with the mind. And yet the same mind has to be used for making the decision on anukulyasya or pratikulyasya. So what is favorable, unfavorable? We have to use the same mind. So how do we do this? This is where the wonderful system set up by Srila Prabhupada comes into effect, because he has given us a process of regulation. He has given us simple rules to obey. These rules, if we follow, then there are lesser situations where we will call upon our mind to say, hey, decide for me. So these rules should be considered not as considerations or something to be evaluated, because when we evaluate, it is going to be evaluated with the objective of sense gratification, and therefore the Prabhupada does not say do it if it pleases you. He gives those rules which we all have to follow regardless of how we feel about them. These are the regulations. So when we follow the regulations, but outside of those regulations also there are several decisions to be made, which may appear that, okay, this is not related to the regulation because I'm chanting 16 rounds, I'm doing other things, I'm following the 4 regulative principles. And but this new thing has come up, which I have to see whether it's right or wrong. So now what do you do? So here again, the moment we invite our mind, the mind will lead us astray. So therefore the system that we have is, we have to ask a superior authority. There is no other way. There is simply no other way. Any other way that we may think is better, because we may not trust the superior authority. We may think that I probably know better than him. But what we don't take into account is that our instrument is designed to mislead us. The mind, which is in a conditioned state, is designed to take us in the direction of increasing sense gratification. Why is it designed like that? Because we are here in the material world for that very reason. Ichha dvesha samuttena dvandva mohena bharata. We are here for that reason. And therefore we have been given a instrument to help us achieve what was our goal till yesterday. So that instrument has not changed. It has not become purified. So when we use that faulty instrument to make daily decisions, how can we expect a positive result? So therefore, a system of hierarchy, even if there are apparent shortcomings in that, is far superior to a system where we rely on our own mind to decide whether something is favorable for devotional service or it is unfavorable for devotional service. And that when we follow that process and place faith in the process, in the system of hierarchy, then we actually advance in the process of surrender. And when we advance in the process of surrender, our sharpness of vision in identifying what is a transcendental activity and what is a fruitive activity increases. And we advance in the process of the items of knowledge. I want to just briefly refer to those items of knowledge, because there are multiple items of knowledge which are mentioned, which are there in today's verse, which connect, which are found also in chapter 13, in verses 8 through 12. Amanitvam adambitvam ahimsa kshantirajyavam acharyopasanam shaucham stairyam atmavinigraha indriyartheshu vairagyam ahankara evacha janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanudarshanam asaktir anubhishvanga putradara grahadishu nityam cha sama chittatvam ishtanishtopapatishu Mai chananya yogena bhaktir avyabhicharini vivikta desha sevitvam aratir janasamsadi adhyatma jnana nityatvam tattva jnanartha darshanam etat jnanam iti proktam ajnanam yad ato anyatha. So Krishna is listing 20 items of knowledge, and he's saying that anything outside of this is considered ignorance. So when intelligent persons are taking shelter of the Supreme Lord, their knowledge of these 20 items begins to increase. And in fact, one of those 20 items of knowledge is taking shelter of the Supreme Lord. And that's what makes them intelligent. And how they take shelter of Supreme Lord, that is also one of the items of knowledge. Approaching a spiritual master. Acharyo upasanam. Acharyo upasanam. That is one of the items of knowledge as well. Approaching the Supreme Lord through the medium of spiritual master. So, and in order to get the motivation to do this, what is the predecessor requirement for this? The ability to see that janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha dosha anudarshanam. Being able to see that there is something wrong here with this whole system of enjoyment, which is packaged, sandwiched between all these miseries of life, which is birth, death, old age and disease. And if a person cannot see that, then there is no motivation. Janma marana mokshaya, that motivation to get out of it should be there. If that is not there, then there is no question of a person approaching a spiritual master, because what will he approach for? A person who does not have that desire will approach a spiritual master for sense gratification. Prabhupada gives so many such stories where somebody approaches him for saying that, oh, my son is not getting admission to good college, or my daughter is not getting married, what should I do? Or somebody, this land is under litigation, well, please do something so that I'll get this land, and it comes out of the court case. Things like that. Oftentimes people approach sannyasis or saintly people for such material benefits, because their goal is they're not even seeing that there is a problem here with birth, death, old age and disease, that they're not seeing that. Because they're not seeing that, their actions are all driven by ichha, dvesha, samuttena. And because they are driven by that, even if they come in contact, of course, anyone who comes in contact with the pure devotee for any reason gets permanently benefited. That there is no doubt. So even if they come with some other material, but their mind is closed. When the spiritual master is giving some information, they're unable to take it because they didn't even have the goal of getting liberated. So if you want to make rapid progress, then first of all, there must be ability to see this. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha dosha darshanam. And for a person to take shelter of the spiritual master, of the Supreme Lord, one of the items of knowledge is acharya upasanam. And how one must approach the spiritual master. That beginning of the verse itself is starting from that. Amanitvam adambitvam. So that has to start with humility and pridelessness. These are the most important qualities that a person should have in order to make progress here. But Prabhupada makes a very important point in this purport. The process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So, if one does not approach or is not able to approach the transcendental service of the Lord, then other 19 items are of no particular value. So, if a person, because there are such persons who see that there is something wrong, who see that, oh, there is a chewing the chewed is happening, that every day, every life I am going through the same thing, or even within my life itself, every time I am attempting to enjoy in some way, the attempt to enjoy ends in frustration only. A person is able to see this over a period of time. But if that does not result in them taking shelter of the Supreme Lord, then no matter how humble a person is, no matter how prideless that person is, or any of the other, no false ego, very clean, take very good care of their cleanliness, everything very neatly organized, very steady, completely self-controlled. All of them have no, even-mindedness is one of them, even-mindedness. Very detached from family life, detached from general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization. Even one of them is Adhyatmam. Today's verse, that word is there, Adhyatmam. So Adhyatmam, or importance of self-realization, is completely useless, according to Prabhupada. Completely useless if a person does not wish to take shelter of the Supreme Lord, or is not able to take shelter, is not able to approach the Lord to take shelter. Then the accepting the importance of self-realization is on name only. You may accept superficially that self-realization is important, but won't make any progress in that, because one has not decided to take shelter of the Supreme Lord. So there is also a very nice description of each of these qualities, which I would encourage you to go through, these 20 items. And the reason why these 20 items are important, Prabhupada describes that in the purport. In the very beginning, he clarifies, this process of knowledge is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activity. And why he is giving the clarification is, the previous verses, Krishna is describing, so this is in the 13th chapter, and the title of the chapter is Nature, Enjoyer and Consciousness. So Krishna is describing what is nature, what is a living entity, what is consciousness, like that he's describing. So in that he starts off by saying that there is a field of activities, and then he describes that there are various elements. There are 10 elements, like 5 great elements, false ego, the Pancha Mahabhuta, and then the 10 senses, the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, all these kinds of things are described. They are all material elements, right? So having described the material elements, then somebody may misunderstand or think that the knowledge that is being described after that is a knowledge about the interaction between those elements. And therefore, because we have been taught, right, that transcendental activity is to render devotional service, direct devotional service. Chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This is transcendental activity. Therefore, what's the need for developing humility, pridelessness, or other things that are being talked about here? Shaucham, not required. They're not required. Like this we may think. But Prabhupada is clarifying that is not correct. Actually, these items of knowledge are the items that are given to overcome, to get out of this field of activities. So this material field of activities which are there, because we are surrounded by this material field of activities in this material world, correct? Therefore, how to get out of this material world, that constitutes actual knowledge of the material world. Because if you know a maze, that means you know how to get out of that maze, correct? If somebody gives you a maze puzzle, has anyone solved a maze puzzle? Maze puzzle, you solved? So if somebody says, I know maze puzzle, I understand it, what does it mean? Does it mean they know how to get inside and enjoy within the maze? No. What does it mean? How to get out. Knowing a maze means how to get out of the maze. Therefore, one who actually understands the field of activities, it means the person who properly understands how to get out of those field of activities. And that is what these 20 items of knowledge are. So there is a very nice description about all these things. Particularly there is one which is, I would say, most directly relevant to us as disciples of Srila Prabhupada, because taking shelter, Mam Ashritya Yatantiye, for us means taking shelter of Srila Prabhupada, because by taking shelter of the spiritual master, we are able to know what is the process of taking shelter of Krishna. So they are not different. Taking shelter of spiritual master for pure devotee is identical to taking shelter of Krishna. And for us, Prabhupada has given us this process of what will please him. So pleasing spiritual master is pleasing Krishna. And according to Srila Prabhupada, the most direct way of pleasing him is to distribute the knowledge that we have gained from Srila Prabhupada. And therefore this is also one of the items of knowledge that has been given as, can anyone guess what is that item of knowledge that directly implies preaching the knowledge that's been given to us by Srila Prabhupada? Does anyone know what that is? Which out of the 20 items of knowledge implies we should be preaching vigorously? I'll read out the 20 items and then you can tell me which one it is. I'll read in English only. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, and self-control, renunciation of objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, non-attachment to children, wife, home, and the rest, and even-mindedness, amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, that is to Krishna, resorting to solitary places, detachment from general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. Accepting the importance of spiritual master. Any other answers? Detachment from family. It means, why does it mean that? Why? I just want to understand better. Why does it mean detachment from family? Why does it mean we have to preach vigorously about Krishna consciousness? I'll actually clarify what Prabhupada says about that, because it can easily be misunderstood. As far as detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should have no feeling for these. They are natural objects of affection. But when they are not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. The best process of making home pleasant is Krishna consciousness, okay, and so on. Yes. Philosophical search. for the absolute truth. Philosophical search for the absolute truth. Why can you please explain why that is? Begin. Okay, so if you want to search for philosophical truth, you want to strengthen your knowledge by distributing the knowledge, by teaching, your knowledge becomes stronger. Okay, any other answers? Devotion. What is that exactly? Unalloyed, constant and unalloyed devotion to me. Yes, that's the one. Please explain why that means preaching. But service of the Lord can be offering deity service, it can be in cooking, it can be anything, no? Why preaching? That is a part of preaching, but because it has got many different ways in which you can render devotional service, preaching is one of them. But there is one here, yes, you're right, one of them is preaching. But there is one which has not been said by anybody so far. So gradually your probability of hit is increasing because already so many have been said. One of them directly means that. There's no need for interpretation. Okay, I'll give you another 10 seconds and then I'll give the answer. Humility. Okay, now I'll start shooting. Please explain. Very nice. It means without worrying about the consequences. That is also pridelessness. Because often we are proud of, that, I'm perceived in a certain way. Then if I start preaching about Krishna, what will they think about me? Okay, what else? They're all indirect. There is one which is direct. The way Prabhupada has defined it. But if you see the word, you won't know. If you see the word, you won't know. But if you see the definition that Prabhupada has given for that word, there is no other meaning for it. Simplicity, no. Okay, 10 seconds are over. It is non-violence. Non-violence. Let me find. Has anyone found it? Yes. So, because that is not there in this one. That line is not in this book. But good. See, one should try his best. The definition of non-violence, what Prabhu has just read, those who are on YouTube may not have heard it. Non-violence is generally taken to mean not killing or destroying the body. That is not the meaning of non-violence. Normally we think non-violence means if there is a bug, insect that is crawling on the floor, don't squat it. People say, don't be violent, just relax, let the insect pass. That is one definition of non-violence, but that is not Prabhupada what he's talking about here as a definition, because this is a part of the transcendental knowledge. This 20 items of knowledge, they are transcendental activities. So Prabhupada defines non-violence. However, actually, non-violence means not to put others in distress. Not to put others in distress. That is non-violence. People in general are trapped by ignorance in the material concept of life, and they perpetually suffer material pains. So actually, everybody is in distress right now. Every person is in distress. Sometimes we see a lot of social media push or activities from various non-profit organizations to get funds for people in distress. Right now there is a Hurricane Ian who has come. No doubt people there are highly distressed. So much, 2 feet. I heard from one of my colleagues who lives there in Florida that the amount of rain that came from Hurricane Ian is 2 feet of rain. Where there is 2 feet of rain. Can you imagine? I cannot even imagine 2 feet of rain. That's a lot. So lot of devastation and places have been completely destroyed. And yet, every single person, even those who are living in Hawaii or Caribbean islands, who are very, very relaxed right now, they are also suffering. Everybody is suffering. So unless one elevates people to spiritual knowledge, unless let us say that somebody is bleeding and is lying down on the road, and we simply walk by, is that acceptable? I'm not the one who made him bleed. I'm not the one who made him bleed, right? He cut himself, or he fell down, or he got hit by a bus or something, and he's lying on the road. And I happen to be walking past that. What is my duty as a good Samaritan? In fact, there are some states where there's a good Samaritan law. If I were to just ignore that and walk by, I'll be in jail. It is violence to simply ignore a bleeding person. Actually, every person is bleeding. Every person is under severe distress. So unless one elevates people to spiritual knowledge, one is practicing violence. One should try his best to distribute real knowledge to people so that they may become enlightened and leave this material entanglement. Not only that, Jara Marana Mokshaya should be for me, but he should be inspired similarly to be liberated from the cycle of birth, death, old age and disease. And for that, I have to give him the knowledge so that he may stop bleeding. That is non-violence. So this one item of knowledge very nicely dovetails with our process of approaching a spiritual master. And there is a necessity for us in order to take shelter of the Supreme Lord. So with this, I'll stop here and see if you have any questions, comments. Yes. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Very nice class. Thank you. So you mentioned that once the reactions of residual activities are burned up, then a devotee or aspiring devotee can take up service with determination. I'm wondering what a devotee can do to have more determination when these reactions are still in the process of being burnt up. And I'm also wondering if there's any reference to a devotee in that stage as well that I could look into.
Yes, there is. And that is where the process of the influence of other devotees who are more advanced comes in. So there was, I think recently we had seen this, was today morning's Bhagavatam verse or the purport, that the influence of devotee makes a person more advanced. Because we choose whom to associate with, and if we associate a person who's endeavoring for advancement, first of all, the process of the resultant reactions to be burnt up, that is given by Prabhupada, is by chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. The Hare Krishna Mahamantra is so powerful that it burns up all the resultant reactions. The devotional service itself is so powerful, and particularly chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra completely burns up very, very quickly, very rapidly the reactions of our past karma. And oftentimes we think that something is happening because of past karma, but in the life of a devotee, you should not think that this is past karma. When a devotee gets an adversity, you have no idea whether it is because of past karma, or it is a specific hurdle that has been given to you, a specific diamond which has been given to you, a treasure that has been given to you, an opportunity that Krishna has specifically given to you so that you may remember him more. So a devotee, first of all, doesn't try to judge whether, oh, this is because of my past karma, I am so suffering so much. That is not the mood of a devotee. A devotee is very, very thankful for the hurdles that come in his way, because each hurdle is an opportunity to be closer to Krishna. So we try not to say that, oh, so much more troubles are there, so I cannot possibly be firmly determined, because I have to wait till all the resultant reactions go away before I can be determined. But even so, the fact is that there are resultant reactions for a person who is starting off on the process of devotional life. So the determination is related to faith. A person's determination, let us say that I tell you that there is rain outside. Will you have any doubts in carrying an umbrella? you will have no doubts. If there's an umbrella available, you'll take it, right? Because you can see that there is rain and you have great faith that umbrella will protect you. And therefore, there is no vacillation in the decision-making process there. There is umbrella, you're going to take it. But when it comes to devotional service, we lack that faith. We don't believe fundamentally that this is actually going to give me a liberation from the cycle of miseries, right? What is misery? We think that is enjoyment. And therefore, because we are misunderstanding misery as enjoyment, we are unable to have faith that actually there is a higher enjoyment available. And faith transference happens when we associate with persons of higher faith. That is a simple process. When we associate with persons who have got stronger faith and they interact with us, their faith rubs off on us. So that is the way to increase our faith, and with greater faith comes greater determination. Any other questions? If not, we'll stop here. Grantra Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki.